What are you gonna eat?
I mean, there's actually a lot on this menu, which makes me freaked out. Have you gotten anything else besides the...
You're breaking the third parallel now.
Sorry.
Talking to the camera. This isn't The Office.
The whole time.
So what's going on is Morgan is confused about what to eat. Well, I think the easiest place to start is how long have we known each other?
Okay, this is what I was trying to figure out. I was talking to Dave and I couldn't remember it because I remember texting you about the machine. And I was like, hey, is this your setup? And you're like, yeah, this is dialed in. Cool. I don't remember us actually meeting. Like, was it via social media? And you're like, hey, text me.
No, so it was like in 2018 or 2017. So like 5 years pre that conversation about the machine.
Yeah.
Jack Martyr shared our numbers with each other.
What a good guy. Okay, great.
Does that ring a bell?
I don't remember him sharing numbers, but that plays in my mind.
Yes, because what were you doing in 2017?
Package deal, traveling around.
Yeah, so exactly. Yeah. So you're in the heart of the package deal.
Yeah.
And I was just starting at, well, I wasn't just starting at, I was into like a couple years into Northern Colorado, but I just started doing the social media infield stuff. And so he was like, hey, I think you two would get along.
That's crazy.
Our numbers with each other. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, I was thinking about that, but that's essentially how we met.
That's cool.
Yeah. So that was almost 8 years ago now. And then we kind of went back and forth, just kind of sharing ideas. And ever since then, if you did a drill that I thought was cool, I just like hit you with a message like,
yeah,
that was dope. Or when did you start doing that, or vice versa?
Yeah, I couldn't put that memory together. I was thinking how cool it would be to or how it was going to be to sit down and just have a conversation, because I don't think we had ever actually done that in person.
Yeah, just on the phone, either via text, DM. Yeah.
Yeah.
How long had you been coaching infielders at that point?
On my own, in 2018, I had started maybe 4 or 5 years. Like, just started my own business, had been traveling around with the package deal. Before that, had just decided that I didn't want to do college coaching anymore. And yeah, now it's been a lot more years. So it's been like 12 for me.
How many college seasons did you coach?
2, but only one as a paid assistant. I did a volunteer season at UC Riverside, and then I did Loyola Marymount in LA. And that was kind of it. I kind of thought that I understood all the different ways that I could be a college coach, and it wasn't going to work for what I wanted. But yeah, I mean, you know all about the seasons. And what made you want to do that?
Well, I knew I always wanted to be a teacher of some kind.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily know I wanted to be a college baseball coach. I thought I'd coach like as a volunteer on the side at a local high school and be like a history professor or a teacher of some kind, or work in like a college administration. Like that's what I thought. So I actually didn't set out to be a college baseball coach, but I think what I fell in love with was like the combination of like development, marketing in terms of like sales and getting players to come, helping young people evolve in like a pretty like ever-changing time in their life that is college, and then the competition, going out there every weekend, preparing over the course of a week, and then competing every weekend to try to win a series. So I just kind of fell in love with that cycle and all the different ways like you get to interact with the players, like from when you first interact with them as a recruit all the way through the finish line when they graduate and potentially get drafted or go off into the workforce. So
yeah, I think the thing that I'm most jealous of college coaches in general is that time in their lives where it's so impactful. Like, everything seems important. Everything is like what they've always been training for. I mean, besides, the professional baseball level, especially with women, like the college game is like the thing,
pinnacle, yeah.
Right? So yeah, I think if there's one thing, I get a lot of people saying, hey, are you going to try to coach college? And I made a conscious decision to not. But yeah, that's one thing that I think that I might consider it for, I guess, would be that growth factor.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think that's the thing that both you and I are missing in our current jobs,
Mm.
right? When you choose to go to the private sector or you choose to go into professional baseball, you kind of lose a little bit of like that human development component of it,
Yep.
right? And so much of what we do is technical and tactical, specific to defensive play. And it's also fun to like be part of their larger story arc. And so, yeah, I still feel that draw back to college athletics. I think I'm sure it's the same. It's like when it comes to like regionals, super regionals, college World Series time, when it's on TV and
Yeah.
a race all the time, I think that's when I miss it the most. And I'm sure it's the same for you.
You get that with your pro guys though?
I would say not at the same extent.
Yeah.
You know, like you can impact people's lives in terms of like helping them acclimate to the major leagues. But like a young major leaguer is still a grown
Mhm.
person. He's still a person with young kids and a wife or fiance who's like they're further along in their developmental arc, and you're helping them like get that extra 1% at like the peak of their career.
Mhm.
So you don't have the same like fingerprint that you do like working in college athletics. Did you always want to be an info coach?
Oh, no. I had no idea what I was gonna do. After college, I knew I loved defense. It was kind of my safe place.
Mhm.
You know, hitting was tough. Defense, I knew who I was. Uh, yeah, no, right after college, I worked at a cancer research center, random job, then went back to sport. And when I was trying to determine if I wanted to be a college coach, definitely leaned into more of the defensive side, but yeah, it kind of fell into my lap in terms of, okay, what I'm going to enjoy doing, what I'm really good at doing once I started traveling and finding my own voice. Like that was the coolest part about the package deal, I think, is it really forced me to differentiate myself from, like, there were 4 of us and I had to be different. Not had to, but like that's just what you do. Like I'm the defense girl. Whatever.
Mhm.
Um, but it's fun. Like I feel like there's parts of defense that really coincide with my personality, right? It's what you do. It's what you're doing when no one's watching. Really detail oriented. You're about the process. But yeah, had no clue. Like a lot of college kids when they graduate, trying to figure out how to fill the void of sport.
That really resonates with me when you say like it like aligned with your personality, because I hadn't heard somebody say that before, but it makes sense for me as well.
Oh,
Right.
yeah,
Like in terms of the
100%.
idea of being obsessive about the little things, about repeating, making your bed every day and putting things in the same spot every day. And defense rewards that. And I think the part of the defensive game that rewards that personality is the fact that the reps and the opportunities are random in gameplay. And so it rewards the person who goes through the same process every single pitch or prepares the same way every single night, because then when the random does occur, you're more likely to be prepared for it. So that makes sense.
Yeah, I think what's really cool too, not really cool, but I guess a different way to say it is when I'm observing you, because literally we've never hung out in person. Yeah, I can joke, hey, you're a control freak. But also, people that are around those control freaks
Thank you.
will feel more safe.
Yeah.
Because that if you're around somebody that wants to know what's going on, wants to control, not even control, but just understand the situation. Hey, what's required of me right now? What am I doing? Everybody's going to feel safer. It's like the power of being a good teammate too.
No, I appreciate that. And I think that's how I've been able to add value to like players who are at the top of their profession and significantly better players than me, as they feel like, all right, somebody's got my back. Somebody's thought about the demands of the position. Somebody has thought about all the things that I could encounter in gameplay, and they're making sure I'm prepared for that. And so, yeah, that's like the fun thing about being a coach to people who are masters of the craft already, is you're helping them build up a coat of armor essentially to be ready. The other thing that's fun about that is it's also like for me where defensive play is like a blend of like art and science to it, right? Like the art of it is still like there's a lot of room to color within the lines, and 2 infielders will make the same play 2 different ways. It's not this precise science that hitting and pitching is, but there's data to it in terms of how often different plays happen,
Mm.
and what's the rate you're expected to complete them. And so I love blending the two, and like allowing for like the art of the movement and how people problem solve, but the science of preparing at like for proportionate outcomes. So,
Yeah, that's, I think, a big thing that I've been trying to learn more of is how we can put numbers to defense. Everybody, everyone's asking, okay, throwing has velo and all the different angles that you can release the ball. Hitting's got a bunch of different metrics. In terms of defense, I mean, we can say, okay, well, let's measure how fast you can get rid of the ball. Let's time uh, when the ball touches your glove, and like how much time it takes you to actually, throw it, hit the first baseman's mitt. But yeah, I don't know. I think I've been a little bit nervous to go like further down the analytical route when so much of it is, hey, let's get back to our mindset. Let's get back to competing. Let's get back to process and not like be so consumed with needing everything to be like a number. So I love the blend. Uh, like with your guys, are you talking numbers to them? Are you talking more like percentages of times that balls are hit here,
yeah.
in-game
Yeah,
situation?
very much so. I mean, it depends on the athlete, to your point. Like some people are drawn to that type of information. Some people only want it to know it when it's convenient. Some people don't want to know it at all. And so on that spectrum, if you're drawn to information and if you're used to interacting with that type of information on the offensive side, then I'm going to produce reports for you that mirror what you're getting on the offensive side. And I'm going to splice up every segment of the play so you understand the timing and the rate at which each of these things happen. If you're somewhere in between, I'm going to collect and manage that data behind the scenes, and I'm going to have it prepared in the event that you ask for it. And then if you find it repulsive and you rather feel and not think, and you rather do and not talk, then I'm going to collect it on my end, and I'm going to use it to help design the training environment that I'm going to put you in, but I'm never going to talk to you about why I'm doing that. And so that's kind of the spectrum in which I operate. But I'm really fortunate because I have this giant magnitude, like treasure trove of data in affiliated professional baseball, where there's no limit to what we can measure from a resources standpoint.
What's your favorite metric?
Oof, what is my favorite metric? It's crazy, but like I think at the end of the day, the simplest thing to look at is how well your group as an entire team turns batted balls into outs. I think that's the name of the game. No matter how fancy or scientifically you want to splice it, when balls get put in play and they are on the ground, can your infield as an entire unit turn a higher rate of them into outs compared to your opponent? And if you do that, you're going to win games, because if you do that at a high rate, that's called defensive efficiency. And if you do that at a high rate, it's indicative of good positioning. It's indicative of good communication. It's indicative of good range. It's indicative of making the routine play off. And it's all the things that we want as infield coaches can be baked into one. And so I love a ton of different metrics, but I would say at the end of the day, that's still the gold standard is, can you turn a high rate of ground balls into outs? And so that's kind of the way I look at it, and kind of my North Star still. And I think it always will be.
And I'm sure that relates and correlates to uh, fielding percentage, right? They're going to go hand in hand regardless.
That's a really unique question, because fielding percentage is what we're all used to because it's what exists
Right.
through our entire lifetime.
And that's really one of the only metrics that defense has that people notice.
Without question. And unfortunately, it's a really loaded statistic because it's very reliant on two things: A, positioning, and B, the official scorer. So putting it in the hands of an observer up in the press box to decide whether it's a hit or an error is so complicated. The question I like to ask is, why does it matter whether it's a hit or error? If he or she reaches first base safely, that's thumb downs for us. If he or she is out before going to first base, it's thumbs up for us. I rather have more thumbs up at the end of the day than thumbs down. And so the reason I point that out is, let's say you take a team and they make 20 errors and their fielding percentage is 980, right? And it looks beautiful. It's on. You click on the NCAA rankings and you sort it, and there they are at the top. And then you take the next team, and they've made 35 errors, and their fielding percentage is 970 something, and they're in the middle of the pack. You have to go to page 2 or page 3 on the NCAA website to find them. But then you later find out that that team that made 30 errors, they got to 50 more balls. And so they gave up 20 less infield hits than the team who made 10 less errors, right? Suddenly, so you'd say, which one would you take? Would you take the set of girls or the set of guys that made 20 more plays? Or would you take the set of girls or guys that made 20 less plays? And if you ask it in that context, every single infield coach, no man or woman, would choose the team that made 20 more plays. They're not choosing based on fielding percentage, they're choosing based on outs. And so I think that's my thought process there, and why I've moved away from fielding percentage, is because sometimes it can be protected by poor range. Sometimes it can be protected by a nice surface. Sometimes it can be protected by a friendly official score. And so I rather just judge based on how many balls you're turning into outs, and I put hits and errors together. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. But it is a complicated thing to sort through, because fielding percentage and errors used to be the gold standard.
I mean, the stats just don't tell the whole story, no matter what.
Without question.
That's why
not one in isolation.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, my favorite answer from Lou when we were hanging out doing his clinic is we'd get, hey, in this situation, da 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 da. And the answer is most often, it depends. Right? There's not a black and white.
Without question. Without question. And I think, I'll ask you this question. For me, my beliefs in infield play have changed the most, where more of my beliefs have marched to like shades of gray and away from black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Less often am I using always. Less often am I using never. And more often am I saying, hey, sometimes this and sometimes that, and sometimes you have to consider that. That's what's changed for me the most. What's changed for you the most since you've started in the last 10 years in terms of your beliefs?
I would say that's really high up there. And I probably would have described it as a different feeling. And because how I'm hearing you describe it is, yeah, I'm just using those words less. I describe it as probably 5 years ago, I had this maybe existential crisis of, do I know what I'm talking about? Because now I'm learning more. I know more. How do I mold that into what I know? And the answer is, you don't have to, right? You know more, so you know more, and that's it. And now you see all the different scenarios, and you get to use it depends and really stand behind that and not feel like you don't know what you're talking about. So yeah, that's changed a ton. I guess I've been using, now we're going to get into nitty gritty defense, this cue elbows up for so long. And thinking about how did I ever do that as a player? I've gotten further and further from just teaching how I played, because if I could go back and train myself differently, I would have, most likely. Just learning more about observing other players, and then observing again and seeing if they're the most elite they can be, and then seeing how I can translate that into the simplest language possible for an 8-year-old. It's extremely humbling, like over and over again, like year after year. I feel like if my goal is to be the best I can possibly be, I have to learn the most that I can, understand it, conceptualize it, digest it, think about if it's my place to interpret it, and hand it off to a kid or not. That's what I have been doing.
In hearing you talk through that, I think about two different things. The first thing I think about is this idea of areas of low variability and high variability. So in anytime, like in a sport, when somebody's trying to complete the tasks, there's area of low variability. And areas of low variability means there are common patterns that exist throughout all different types of athletes, all different types of ages, all different types of skill, ability, right? So every single person is going to, when doing it successfully, is going to have this common trait. That's an area of low variability. An area of high variability is differences between you and I, right? She might do it this way versus she might do it this way versus he might do it this way. And over time, I think as you become a master coach, you learn that there's more things in the bucket of high variability and there's less things in the bucket of low variability. I think that's what you're talking about. The other thing I think about listening to you talk is something that I feel pretty passionately about, and it's that like the spectrum. Are you familiar with the quote about the simplicity on the other side of complexity? Are you familiar with that? So there's a quote that says that ignorance is simplicity on this side of complexity, and genius is simplicity on the other side of complexity. And that's basically what you described when you're talking about taking in new information, conceptualizing it, digesting it, and then delivering it to an 8-year-old. That's the genius on the other side. And I think when we first started, when we say, hey, everyone get in this position, everyone get elbows high, everyone do this, we were on the ignorant side. We were being simple, but it's because we didn't understand the complex. Once we understood all the different ways infielders complete different plays, now when we cue, we might say, it depends, and then provide a little nugget. And that's the simplicity on the other side of complexity. We're still allowing wiggle room for each athlete to do it slightly different, but we're still baking in the ideal outcome. Does that resonate with you? Does that make sense?
100%. Because I think about all the things I've learned about throwing, how the body moves. I work with Austin Wasserman a little bit, and he's way smarter than me. So I'm like, okay, how do I take all this information and make it make sense to me? Because I know for a fact that it has to, like, I can't get behind it unless it makes sense. But yeah, going back to my cue. Okay, elbows up. I've been saying this not because I want them to just flap and, move in this direction, but ultimately after years of me doing this cue, I've got kids that move like that. And it's like, well, that's on me. That cue needs to be fixed. And I've been like trying to figure out a different way to say it. I was watching your session today. You're talking about an A versus a V. I don't know what that kid was doing, but yeah, I'm trying to work on a different cue because it's my habit to say it.
So what he was doing the V, because he was following the same elbows up, it's a symptom of that cue. And what I think that's a product of, and because we're similar in age, we had similar age coaches. And I think in our generation as infielders, we were victims of people who cued to the extreme.
Or cued a picture.
Without question. So either a freeze frame or they say a word and they didn't want your elbows low, but they didn't want them to actually be high.
Right.
They said it with the idea that we weren't going to use video. So they were trying to coach to a feel, an extreme feel to get the moderate.
Yes.
And what we deal with now are athletes that use film and look at themselves do it. And so if they like Amelia Badeo us and take it literally and go elbows up, they actually get in the wrong position. And that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
And so I've migrated away from cues that I was coached because I realized they didn't want me to actually do it to a T. They were just saying an extreme.
Let's do a feel.
Yes. And then hoping that somebody would get into a moderate position. So I rather cue the exact position, the moderate position I'd like. And so that's how I march towards more of that aim frame. And then the idea of cracking an egg, thumb down, right? And then pulling a bowl, right? So if I crack an egg and I pull a bowl, I'll end up into that better power position at foot strike. When I cue that high elbow, like I used to do, like you used to do, you kind of end up with that like inverted W position at foot strike. The ball is going to be below your shoulder and your elbow. And I've learned that if I go egg crack into bow pull at foot strike, I'll end up with a position where my elbow is slightly below my shoulder and the ball is slightly above my shoulder. And it's a much stronger and safer position for a guy or girl to throw out of. And so that's how I've landed onto that. But that kid, I was talking about his V because he was doing the exact cue you were talking about. Yeah. And I could tell he was looking up into the rafters at a parent because he'd been taught to do it. To that. You know what one thing I've always like admired you for, Morgan, is that you always like introduce other coaches into your mix. Like you've always collab. And I always feel like that's been a positive for your career and like the players you coach, and just like shows your humility.
Well, selfishly, I've always done it so I can learn.
But the desire to learn comes from a place of humility.
Well, yeah. Yeah. I mean, thank you for saying that. And also, I don't think I can ever stop doing that. And if I have something where people want to come, dang, I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
So during the season, your role as bench coach, are you analyzing film? You're going through like what they're actually doing. Like you're not structuring workouts anymore, correct?
You're structuring pre-game workouts, which are like 15 to 20-minute windows. Some of those are maintenance. Some of those are getting out in front of something that's starting to pop up. Some of those are taking a corrective stance on something that's gone sideways. But the bulk of what I do in season is about like tactically preparing the team for the opposition. Like, you know, and
like where should you be standing? Like,
and
what should be thinking?
And what do they do? Do they double steal in this situation? Well, are they going to use a pinch-hitter in this situation? What reliever will come next? And so my brain goes from like teacher to tactician. And so I think being a coach in the major leagues is so fun because there's a technical component of it and a tactical component of it. And spring training is heavy technical. The off season is heavy technical. We're getting into the nitty-gritty, almost like what you do. And then the season is heavy tactical, where it's like, okay, how do we use what we've practiced? How do we wield it as a weapon? How do we wield it as a shield to protect ourselves from something going awry? And so it's fun to wear both hats. Where in your world right now, you kind of run spring training every single day. Would you agree?
I'd agree with that. I'd say that that's got a lot of thoughts in my mind because I look at you and I look at every coach that actually has a team to manage. It's such a bigger game than what I do. Like I am doing one thing and I do it really, really well because it's the only thing that I do. For you and all the other coaches that are managing teams, it's like you got to do that and you got to do this and you this and this and this and this. And it's just cool to hear you talk about it, not just talk about it, but actually pinpoint the 20 things that you have in each of those positions. So it's not just one job. So I know that I have multiple jobs because I'm a business owner, right? I got to figure it out. I got to get butts in seats. I've got to market myself. I've got to do the video. I've got to have a CFO, all the things, right?
Yep.
But
coach education.
There's so many jobs in your role that people have no clue about. I mean, they can guess, but nobody's thinking that you're like how in-depth spring training actually is on your end.
Yeah, no, it really does scratch the surface. And so that's my favorite thing is like, I feel like a seasonal employee whose job description changes with every season, whether it's the off season, whether it's spring, whether it's the early part of season, whether it's crunch time down a home stretch for the postseason, whether it's the postseason. And so I absolutely love how those priorities shift and it keeps it fresh in my mind. And I become like ready for the next thing. So I get to graduate from that.
One of the things I think about a lot is like how I teach kids and we want them to stay in sport because it's just good for them. Like that's something that we probably both agree on. But when you get to the higher levels, there's a lot like listening to you speak, you're not average, obviously. You're well above average in terms of intelligence, in terms of how you can do things. And it's very clear that so many kids, like when you are urging them to like stay in sports and do this thing and get really good at your process and hard work and all the good lessons, in order to get to the place they all want to be, they have to break free from this need to fit in. Like when did you learn that? I guess because like sitting across from you, you are very like, you know your acute differences and how they are your superpower. When did you figure that out?
Ooh, that's a complicated question.
Yeah.
I would say for me, it's just a case of following the fruit. Like I'm very like scientific how I run processes. And so it's like if I spent my time on something, did it work out? Oh, I saw the fruit from that. Maybe not 2 weeks later, but sometimes 2 months or 2 years later. Okay, let's run that again. Okay, let's pivot my attention to this. Right, if I channel my energy there, what fruits did that yield? And so I'm always kind of weighing like a scientific process of what I'm doing in the present, what strengths I'm using, what weaknesses I'm improving, what research I'm doing, what habits I'm forming, and how they result in positive outcomes. in my life. And so that's kind of, I followed the fruit to my current place in personality.
Yeah. What works, what doesn't.
Exactly. And I think for you, you've probably found your own style as a manager of people and a coach as well. It's not like you've gotten to where you have by not separating yourself from the pack.
Mm-hmm.
And so do you have a point in your life where you think, okay, this is what led me to present day?
I think I'm still at this point because I think for so long, I love what I do. I like coaching defense. I've never thought of myself as like, wow, uh, I think I'm one of the best, infield instructors. And it's only since maybe the last 2 years where, marketing people are telling you to say, hey, be the best at something and like let's run with this. And I started really thinking, I definitely wanna be surrounded by the best. I wanna be in these rooms where people are smarter than me. But as far as, like, when it clicked to me that things can be fruitful, like, things can work and still not feel great because a lot of this is work, right? I think so many of us are in search of, like, just thinking about my career or, like, thinking about my life compared to your life, and I think, "Man, it's a hard schedule," right? Uh People are myself included. I remember saying no to college coaching because I didn't want that lifestyle. I didn't like the cycle, just like you kind of like it, right? I didn't like that cycle. And I think just choices are so interesting that now I know that I have my own cycle that I created with my business, but I just chose a different hard. And I think it's been clicking recently. Just it doesn't, if you want to be excellent, if you want to be above average, you're going to just choose what you want to struggle through, to bust your ass for. You just roll with it. And there's no like, there doesn't have to be like, oh my God, yeah, I'm living this dream life. And sometimes it's just, you just go.
Yeah, no, I think what you're talking about is like how much mastery is tied to like the every single day, like what seems like meaningless task when with no audience, right? And I think when people think about mastery, they think about what they see from mastery on the end of the rainbow, right? The views, the success, the pay, the notoriety, and they're missing like the singular decisions to be disciplined over and over and over and over and over. And I think like when I was starting my career, when you were getting your business off the ground, the discipline to take on the next lesson, to do it again, to pour into that kid for that 30 minutes. It could have been lesson number 40 for a week, but pour into that kid as if it was the most important thing they were going to do. And so without a doubt.
How often do you teach softball kids?
I work with softball girls, I would say just every off season. I try to be non-discriminatory and include softball girls in every one of my camps. And then I do a little bit of consulting work with some softball teams or serve as a resource. And so between those two things, between camps and staying in contact with softball coaches, I get to interface with softball infielders a couple times a year.
And I would assume that people that are asking you out, maybe to, consult and all that stuff, they would say, hey, baseball and softball are the same, right? That's why they want to have you out. What's the biggest difference that you see?
Yeah, I mean, without question, it's game clock.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Would you agree?
Yeah, so the time you have, the field's smaller.
And so anytime you shrink a space, right, whether it's a drill or in gameplay for softball, anytime you shrink a space, you have to be more efficient with movements. And so efficiency with movements is smaller, it's shorter, it's more compact, and it's quicker. And so common patterns in baseball, you can take a single shuffle or double shuffle, whether you want to call it 2 or 4 step or single shuffle, double shuffle in your post field in the way you catch the ball and then make the throw to exchange. And that exchange window, that's going to take somewhere between a little over a second to over a second and a half. In softball, with a smaller diamond, that gal's already going to be halfway down the line if you're taking a second and a half. You don't have that window. You're not talking about 4.4, 4.6 home to first times. You're talking about
2.9.
You're talking about well less than 3. So if that's the case, the softball slow pattern is more like the single shuffle, and there's a lot more what I call zero steps, where you're replacing your feet, you're putting them straight up and straight back down, right? It's the absolute pinnacle of movement efficiency, and so that's why I love coaching softball and having that crossover experience, because it forces you into thinking about how you're going to be the most efficient. And that's just post-field. Pre-field, softball girls have to be more aggressive with their routes. Baseball infielders can be like people playing pool, where you're setting up one shot for the next. You're going to take an angle to field the ball. That's also going to set up optimal footwork to throw. Softball infielders, more often than not, they just have to take a route to intercept. And then once they intercept, they have to make a move to throw. So they're working with more acute, sharp angles, where baseball infielders have the luxury of curves and curved routes.
Yeah, I've played with the idea of getting eyes to the side. My college coach, JT D'Amico, he was talking about, all right, let's look at the clock, hands on a clock, step to 3, all that stuff. And sometimes it applies on like a slow runner, right? You can make your steps. A lot of times it's almost just a shift, like to get your eyes, literally get your eyes to the side, or like you said, you just go, go to get the ball. But yeah, I have found that as well. It's mostly a difference in footwork of you've got one step to go get it, one step to throw it. And if you don't, she's safe. That's the game.
Yeah, without question. There's just no margin for error. Like there's the sharpness of angles. I like what you're talking about, getting to the side, but what ends up when you do that dance to the side, the baseball style version is you swing so far over that you got to swing all the way back, right? And the softball version, optimally to me, is just like passing somebody, like slow traffic.
Yeah.
Right? So you're going to take that straight route, but you're just aiming just to the glove side of the ball to set yourself up for eyes to the side. You're not going to be eyes to the side for the entire route.
Right.
Right? And so you're just taking angles and you're shaving off certain sections of it. And so that's why I enjoy softball. The other thing about softball infield play that's so interesting is based on the size of the ball relative to hand size and the urgency you have to get rid of the ball. There's a lot of like less aesthetically pleasing movements in softball infield play that are more survival skills. You get in and go. Where baseball, their average hand size, the player's average hand size relative to the ball, and the time they have on the clock to exchange and throw allow them to get in more beautiful positions. And so sometimes there's great softball infielders that look less aesthetically pleasing when they field, but it's because they're using every single survival skill they have to complete the play because of the time on the clock. Does that make sense to you?
100%. I see it when kids are starting to throw. I take the softball out of their hands just because I don't want to promote a push throw. But when they're learning how to throw and their hands are all outstretched from a softball, I just want to relax them a little bit. But even mechanics aside, gameplay, 100%. Like, we just need to get it out and go, and you get some of that. And I think, I myself, I'll call it a trap because whatever. But I've fallen into the trap of looking at other people's videos and just saying, man, that looks really pretty. Or just watching Major League Baseball, because who doesn't love watching a game? And you're watching their feet move, and you're watching their hands move. And they put it in slow motion. It looks so smooth and crisp. And then I'm like comparing it to even, college or pro softball, and it's just different. And you can't quite put your finger on it other than it's just the game's different.
Yeah, without question. I think when you take away time on the clock, you cannot worry about how things look, right? And so I think when in Major League Baseball, when you watch plays where the infield's in, right, and the entire infield is in, that's much more like a softball infield, where you have the frantic movements to just survive and get to the ball and complete the play. And those are the only times where you see problem solving and troubleshooting similar to softball.